Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Tom's Takes podcast. Folks, football season is here. Living in Nebraska, the Huskers are shoved down your throat all year long, whether it's in season or off season. Over time, I got tired of it, and the play on the field definitely didn't help. So when I was in high school, I switched TCU from being my second favorite team to being my most favorite team. It's nothing personal against the Huskers. I just believed I was a better fit in purple than in red. You know who also lives in Nebraska and roots for the Frogs? My guest right here for the pod. This is Scott Hazelrigg, a TCU alum and the president of the North Star Foundation. Scott, how are you?
I'm great. Go Frogs.
Yes, go Frogs. So, Scott, let's begin by talking about some of your favorite TCU football memories.
So when I was in college, I was at TCU in the late 80s, early 90s. And to be honest with you, the Frogs found a way to win the first 5 or 6 games, get everybody hyped up, super psyched that they were going to be great. And then they'd hit conference play and get just destroyed by like Texas A&M. And so it was a hard time to be a Frog. The joyous part about being a Frog, though, was that when the fortunes of the Huskers may have changed a little bit post-college, that's when the Frogs were on the rise. And so really their transformation of, I remember they played in the Sun Bowl versus USC, and they won. And it was one of those things you're like, wow, the Frogs just beat USC in a bowl game. And after that, well, their coach left and Gary Patterson came in or was elevated from D coordinator to head coach. That's really when they were on the rise. And it was cool because every season was a possibility of like, what's the next thing that they can accomplish? And so it became really easy, not only to be a Frog fan, but to be a passionate Frog fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm too young to remember him, but I presume you remember LaDainian Tomlinson pretty well.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, during the era back in the 80s, early 80s to mid 80s, when SMU got the death penalty, TCU was like a half step behind them, meaning like they were right there and just either didn't get caught or they didn't do quite as much high profile stuff. But they had some amazing players, but who were getting paid. And so then LaDainian Tomlinson was really that first player that was like a notable, like people talked about him, even if you weren't a TCU fan, in that post era. And so he did a ton to elevate the program on the field and off the field.
Yes. And today, he's still in the Chargers organization. Of course, he's well known for playing with the Chargers in San Diego. And now he works with the Chargers, even in LA. He works with the ownership group. He works with the Spanos family. So the vlog episode, how did you like it?
How did I like TCU or the vlog episode?
It can be either.
Both. Well, the coming from Nebraska, Southwest Conference, which was, of course, where, all Texas teams were in Arkansas up until the early 90s. It was a different atmosphere. It was a different type of experience than growing up in Nebraska. Everybody in the state of Nebraska pulls for the Huskers, with the exception potentially of Tom Saline. So everybody is all in, but yet in Texas you had, 8 D1 teams. And so literally your neighbor might be cheering for the team you're playing against on a given weekend. So very different experience, but super, super cool in the sense that it also is a rallying cry for, who are your people, who is in your posse. And bragging rights were not about state to state, like Nebraska to Oklahoma. Bragging rights might be like my block, my neighborhood, the person living next to me. And so very different, but also really intimate and sometimes really personal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And how'd you like the vlog episode?
I like it. But the key thing is that you think about this, and this is actually the Texas Tech TCU rivalry. And I just discovered this the other day, was, really the origins of Texas Tech, who was founded in part because of Amon Carter, because he really was a proponent for building a D1 school into a school for West Texas, who also was a huge champion for Fort Worth. Things like that are the backstory between what are those rivalries. Those are the things that really make college football fun.
Absolutely. Now let's get into the nitty gritty about Amon G Carter Stadium. How do you like the location of the stadium?
So Amon G Carter Stadium is right in the center of the TCU campus. And so for a student, and they have a high proportion of students who live on campus or live in on-campus housing tied to fraternities and sororities. Literally, you're walking across campus. You don't have to drive anywhere. The tailgate is between your dorm and the stadium. So there really couldn't be a better location from a college football experience than where it's situated on campus.
Yes, I'd give that a 10 out of 10 for location. It's right in the heart of campus, as you said, and it's very easy to get to.
Yeah, it's really, part of that coming back to, you think about college stadiums and back in the day when, like SMU played at the Cotton Bowl. They didn't even have an on-campus stadium. They now do. But it's just a very different experience. And, of course, college football is a very different experience now than it was 10 or 20 or 30 years from now or 30 years ago. But the intimacy of how does college sports tie into your college experience, TCU's really got that pretty well dialed in, pretty figured out. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the outside atmosphere. We've already talked about that a little bit. You got with the tailgating. How do you like the outside atmosphere there?
Yeah, so I'm going to come back to the 1980s experience versus the 2025 experience. And back in the day, again, it's really hot for those afternoon games, especially in September and even early October. And so if your team is losing handily, people punt out at halftime and they don't come back. But also, to be honest, the tailgates are really hot. So there wasn't really that same atmosphere. Whereas today, they've got it really figured out, meaning in the sense that the atmosphere, whether it be in the parking lots or whether it be in the intentional tailgates that are structured around the stadium, has an amazing feel. I will not say that it's like going to Ole Miss, but in terms of that connectivity and the expectation and the level of sophistication, it's pretty darn cool.
Yep. Yeah, personally, I would give the outside atmosphere. It's not amazing, like you said, it's not Ole Miss, but I would give it a solid 7.5 out of 10. They got the Frog Alley, which I showed off in the vlog episode, and lots of food, music. It's a very poppin' area. It's that whole area is just a great scene every single TCU game day.
Yeah, and they've done a really nice job. You mentioned Frog Alley. They've done a really nice job of engaging families. Mm-hmm. So in the context of who's going to the game, there's a lot of folks. If you're in the stadium or if you're out walking around before or after game, there's a lot of little kids. There's a lot of young kids.
Oh, yeah.
And they've really been intentional about that this is a family experience. And I think they've done a nice job with that, even as they've upgraded the stadium. And so that in turn, seats are more expensive and the experience more expensive. I just was reading something the other day that for this season, that for up till 30 minutes before game time, you can get a $3 beer, a $3 hot dog, or a $3 like 44-ounce soda. And I was laughing because I thought that's what you want to do is you, of course, want to get everybody in the stadium so that kickoff, you've got a critical crowd, but also thinking about how are you appealing to families, knowing that if you go someplace and you can get your kid a hot dog for $3 and a Coke for $3, that's family friendly. And so
Yes.
I'll be interested to see how that plays out and how that adds to the atmosphere and to the experience of what they want their fans to have.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to parking and accessibility. We've already talked about we really like how accessible the place is. Have you ever had a problem parking at the Carter?
So I have not been the beneficiary of great parking passes for TCU games. So on game day, you do have to park a fair bit away.
Yeah.
But at the same time, on the outlying lots that are tied, they're usually for students and for staff and for faculty during the week, you can find a space. And the other thing is you can find a space and it doesn't cost you $50. You just have to walk a little bit. But the parking piece in terms of how they reallocate the parking lots right around the stadium during the week and on non-game days, those are really student parking. And so then, you think about that, where do all the students have to do and where do they all have to go in order to create that atmosphere? But you've got critical mass of parking right around the stadium. In contrast to a Memorial Stadium, you really don't have that. You've got the Champions Club, but you don't have just big concrete lots that you can allow people to then reconfigure and to create a different experience.
Mm-hmm. I would give the parking a 6 out of 10 because they make you like if you're not a student, if you're not faculty, if you're not like super connected to the university, you do have to park a ways away. And though you don't have to go super far, but It really depends on the time of year. Walking in the hot Texas sun, it doesn't help.
It is those early games, where it's just blazing, and then you're walking. When you get to before you ever get to the stadium or you get to your tailgate, you're already really hot and sweaty. You're like, oh, this is a whole lot of work. Very first world problems, by the way.
Yep. But speaking of being hot and sweaty, and I should have highlighted this more in the vlog episode, is that the Texas Tech band, and I think this is a policy for every single opposing team band that comes to TCU. I mean, opposing bands, obviously, they're welcome, but if they're welcome or if they come, you're sitting in the bleeds and you're gonna be baking.
It is the funniest thing. I mean, truly, it's one of those things like you think about that, like you're like music is raining down on you because they are in the upper echelon of the end zone. The cool contrast to that is what TCU has done, which a lot of schools haven't done, and really it's I'm sure tied to revenue, is, all along one entire side of the field from the 20 to the 20, it's students. And they literally are row 1 through row 40 or whatever. And so while you've got the visiting band, which is halfway back to their home school, TCU students are right there. And in terms of how do you create an atmosphere that's both friendly to the college student, but also that's impactful in the game, they've kind of figured that out. And it's really fun. I mean, selfishly, I'd love to see that for a Husker game. We've got the students that are down in the corner and then really up in the far south end zone. But how do you get the students engaged in the game and make them feel a part of it? TCU's got that really, really done well.
Yeah, well said. Moving on to the exterior of the place. Personally, I would give this a very good 9 out of 10. I really like how it blends in with the rest of the campus. It looks very Texas-like. It looks very grand. And yeah, just when you walk towards the stadium, you look like, you really think, I'm going to a football game.
Yeah.
What say you?
Yeah, the sort of the sandstone color that is the brick that kind of permeates campus. The Amon Carter Stadium prior to 2010, when they began to renovate, actually just tear down and rebuild, it looked a little more utilitarian, meaning it was more, a little more functional versus really thinking about how does this fit in with the neighborhood and with the community and with the TCU campus. And through the two upgrades that they did over the course of the last, of course, about a 7-8 year period, that really probably in today's dollars would be about a $300 million project. I think total it was like 275. They really did a great job of having that be an asset within the campus as a whole. And the thing that's really fun is that some of the spaces they've created on the club level and stuff are also spaces that they're using regularly. Like, so new students are coming to campus, and where do all the freshmen have their convocation to get together? Yeah, maybe in the Schollmeyer basketball arena, but it also they're having lunch there, and so they use that asset of the stadium 7 days a week and even in the off season.
Moving on to the interior, I think I would give this a solid 8 out of 10. I think, like I said, for the exterior, you walk in, you can see the stadium right away. It looks beautiful. The moment you first peek out onto the field, it's just like, this place is beautiful. It's grand. It's decked out in purple. Purple seats are everywhere. Purple bleachers. It's good. I mean, it's nothing spectacular, but it does the job.
Yeah. When you say 8.5, I'm curious as to what's a 10 for you, because you're a tough customer. Two things that in the stadium since the renovation that just blew me away. One was seats I had for a game a couple years ago. Truly, it was one of those days. It was 100 degrees outside at kickoff, and yet there was essentially a mini cool zone fan underneath my seat, and my seat was mesh, so that I was being cooled from below while watching the game. I'm not going to lie to you. I wish I had that on my own couch at home. It was spectacular. And I was like, oh, they thought this through, because you're sitting there and again, they thought about how do we make sure that we're accommodating for the climate for this level of seat. And the other piece that was really, that I really appreciated was that when we went inside to the club level on the Legacy side, there's a buffet and you're eating lunch and stuff at 2, and you can grab food during the game. But also, there's huge windows, so you can still see the game. You still feel like you're part of the game. And if something happens and there's a uproar and people are cheering, you can look out and turn and quickly assess what was going on. And so you didn't feel like, even if you went inside to get something to drink or to grab food, that you were disconnected from the game. It wasn't an either or, it was an and.
Yes, that actually leads us into the concourse, which you already talked about. Yeah, I think TCU nailed it when it comes to concourses. Yeah, you said it. You're not tuned out from the game the moment you leave. If you have to go to the restroom, I mean, there's you can hear the radio on still in there. You can still see the game pretty clearly. Yeah, the concourses are nice, clean, wide open, natural light coming in. 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Now, it's really, it's the example of, how do universities around the country retrofit old stadiums versus in the case of TCU or in the case of, University of Kansas, they really went and said, we're taking it down to the studs and then we're building it back because fan expectation is different. Technology is different. What's that look like? When you built Memorial Stadium, nobody ever thought about a flat screen. And now you think about in the context of what do we expect and what's that replay and what's that fan experience? New stadiums or newer stadiums like Amon G Carter, they're trying to make sure they're appealing to the 20-something that grew up not knowing that you couldn't watch a football game on your phone or couldn't constantly say, oh, that was a great play, I'm going to look at it again. So how do you appeal to that clientele in order to get folks to choose to not sit at home on their couch or to digest that game someplace else, but to actually physically go to the game and be present?
Let's go to the food. You often eat at the TCU games?
I will tell you this, that so if I go to a Husker game, I'm a huge fan of a red hot dog, and I'm going to eat at least one and maybe more than I should. The part about TCU was in the concourses, as you said, it's really open. There's air, and so it doesn't feel like you're isolated from the game. In the club seats and things like that upstairs, literally, TCU has, they may have every different game. They may have different caterers. And so the experience is different even from game to game during a given year. And, they have pregame food, they have in-game food, and then they have stuff towards the end. They do an amazing job. I mean, it is a whole different experience than just going to a football game and saying, I'm going to get food because I'm hungry. It's really like, wow, what else is the thing that I could go enjoy that adds to that experience? And that's a little bit more like I would compare it to some cases like an NFL experience. Just the amenities that they have and the way they've got it set up to be able to deliver on that are in competition or in rival with something like that. Of course, then the price point ties to that as well.
Yep. I would say the food, the one food that I had there during the game that I went to last year against Texas Tech was the Buffalo Bros Pizza. That's a Fort Worth institution, and they make great pizza. It's not deep dish like my favorite pizza, but it's very good. I would give that a 9 out of 10.
And the Buffalo Bros is right across the street, literally 2 feet off the TCU campus, on the other side from the stadium. But that's also a great example. Kind of, I think the parallel I probably use with Nebraska would be Arunza. What's the thing that's a local that people get, that they understand, but then how do you incorporate that into the fan experience?
Honoring team history. I think TCU does a very good job of doing that. However, they honor their team history more so outside the stadium, actually more in Schollmeyer, because they got the glass like footballs where the national championship trophies are. I don't think those were the real trophies all the way from the 1930s.
Did they have trophies in the 1930s? Maybe they give you a participation ribbon.
Yeah, but they do a good job still, and yeah, the trophies are there. They do a good job of honoring Frog players that have played in the NFL. So I wish there were like an exhibit in the stadium, but I would still give it a good 8 out of 10.
Yeah, because of the proximity, because it's right next door, you can get there. And I don't know, I think I've been there when both it's been open on game days and not open on game days. But you raise a good point. How do you incorporate that history Even if your last national championship was 1938, how do you incorporate that into that space? Because that's part of that legacy of, where do we come from? How long have we been doing this? And how do we play the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for those that don't know, Scholmeyer Arena isn't just the basketball and the volleyball arena at TCU. It also houses the TCU Athletics Hall of Fame, where you can find all the TCU athletics history from football to men's basketball, women's basketball, just about every sport. Moving on to the scoreboard. This, it's digital and all, which is certainly better than a dot matrix that they used back in the old days. They used that back in your day, didn't they?
They didn't even have that kind of technology. There was a guy who was just standing there, and he would act out the play that was just on the field just to show. I'm just joking. I'm old, but I'm not that old. But it is, it's much different than it was. But compared to other stadiums you might have been in, I would say this, it's not as large in relation to in the positioning of that in the stadium. It's on one end and on the more open end. Depending on where your seats are, it's relevant or not relevant.
Mm-hmm. The scoreboard, I would give that, I'll say a 6.5 out of 10. It's big enough for everyone to see, but it isn't like it isn't completely digitized. And I think TCU can get a bigger scoreboard actually.
Yeah, well, you think about, what do we expect now today? And it's like if you've been to SoFi Arena in California with the ribbon around the top. Yeah, you can't do that in an outside stadium. Well, not yet. Maybe you can. But again, we're so used to things like that, which becomes our expectation. So that when you have something that seems like it's not even a smart TV, it is. But we just know that there's so many things that are so much more amazing that help us to enjoy that fan experience. I'd agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the cost. And you already talked a lot about this. Yeah, I would say the cost it's very good. I would give that 8.5 out of 10. I think the Buffalo Bros pizza that cost, I believe, $7.50 that went with the water, not bad at all for a pizza and a water. My jersey, which I got in the gift shop just before the game, that was pretty pricey. Like I want to say like 60 something bucks or something. It might have even been higher, but yeah, you talked a lot about how family friendly the TCU games are, like $1 like hot dogs, waters, and all that. Has any particular game, against like higher profile opponents, have they been a little tougher on your wallet?
Yeah, and part of it's just it's the reality of who we're playing, number one, and what's the ticket price. But also, I have to admit, I've got a good friend who played basketball at SMU, and so we've been to one game at Amon Carter, and I've been to one game with him on campus at SMU. But the year we went to TCU, I was like, well, no, I absolutely want to show you that we're just better at this. So my ego might have gotten involved, and I might have gotten just the nicest tickets that I could, and they were not cheap. But were they worth it? Yeah, they actually were really great. But I think what TCU's done a nice job is you both got the high-end club seats and things like that too, to appeal to that market. But then coming back to, are there also a way for you to get your family into that stadium and not have it be that you couldn't send your kids to college because it was so expensive? Mm-hmm. And what are the things they do? So I think they've struck a nice balance of that. And that's pretty cool because you always want to have young fans who grew up saying, I went to a game and I experienced this and I know what it's like. And before the game, if you've been there and you're in the stadium, they have kids who can go out and they can run on the field and they come out ahead of the team.
You're the bleacher creatures.
Gosh, thank you. I was drawing a blank on the name. If you think about that, if you are like a second grader and you get to get on the field in front of that many people before a game and run, like, oh, you're a fan for life. That's awesome.
Yeah, that really is amazing. Yeah, TCU really likes to start them young.
They do. And here's the thing, you and I would like to do that, but people would not think it's that cute or funny if Tom and Scott are out running on the field before the game. They'd be kind of horrified.
Yeah. Who are those two sickos?
Put them back in their seats.
Fan support and inside atmosphere. I think the Carter, it's not a consistently good home field advantage, but there are games, particularly against higher profile opponents, like against Texas Tech or Texas, Baylor, really just about any school in the state, and even some higher profile out of state teams like Oklahoma, maybe Oklahoma State, K-State. The higher profile Big 12 teams that can make it a good home field atmosphere at the Carter. The game that I went to, the Texas Tech game, it was very good. It wasn't insane, but it was excellent. I would give that a 9 out of 10. What say you?
I think the thing that, so actually, interesting enough, the highest attended game at Amon Carter was 2023 when Colorado came to town in Sanders' first year. And so you think about that, and if you look at like the top 10 attendance games ever, I think half of them are Texas. And so that also may mean Texas fans are coming. But people show up and show out for really big games. I think where TCU's strength is again coming back to, you've got a camp, you've got a total student body of somewhere around 12,000 students, and you're averaging 6,000 or 6,500 students at a game. So if you get half of your student body to a football game, that's pretty darn amazing.
Yes, it is.
And maybe even more than that. And I think that's a great advantage, but also that's a great piece of the atmosphere of how do you tie in college athletics with your overall college experience. I think the thing that is that sometimes is the only drawback is because it's so hot. If they're up heavy at halftime, if it's not a huge game, there's not as many incentives to go back in because you're like, I am baking, so I'm going to either stay in the parking lot at the tailgate or I'm going to go home and watch the second half on TV. But when that place is full and when you have a team that people are excited to cheer for and a team that you're excited to cheer against, it's a pretty great atmosphere.
I agree completely. Moving on to amenities like bars, restaurants, kids' play areas. I didn't see, obviously we talked about the bleacher creatures, the kids running onto the field. I didn't get a ton of kids' play areas inside the stadium, more so outside the stadium, particularly in the Frog Alley. They had like a passing game, maybe like those obstacle courses that kids can run through. And as far as bars and restaurants go, no, I didn't see any of that at the Carter. So I would say this might be my lowest score on here. I would say 4 out of 10 because the only thing that saves it is, the Frog Alley. They keep the kids involved and the bleacher creatures, but that's not necessarily a play thing. They just run onto the field and then they go back to the parents.
Yeah. I think you're right. Where that stadium is situated on campus and what's around, there's really not a bar district or there's a couple that you can get to. And then, I think you give credit where credit's due, which is the stuff that they create outside the stadium before the game for kids is well done. It's just not a permanent structure, and there's nothing inside that adds to that or that complements that.
Mm-hmm. Let's go on to the cheer squad and the mascot. Well, the cheer squad, 10 out of 10. They do their job. They do it very well. They're not overwhelming, but they don't have to be. They're really good at what they do. But of course, Super Frog, I would give him an 11 out of 10. He is just so good at what he does, and he hypes the crowd. He's a friendly mascot. The kids love him. He's just a fantastic college mascot.
So I have my first picture with Super Frog when I was probably 21, and I have a picture of myself with Super Frog over the age of 50. He is a solid mascot that has only grown better with time. I agree.
And they gave him quite the dramatic introduction in the vlog episode. Like it felt like the team was coming out onto the field. You got the smoke, the TCU flags with like the sparklers on them, the horn going off, which we'll get into in a moment. Yeah, the fireworks going off. It really felt like the team was coming out. And that's kind of the intro that they gave him because they just love Super Frog so much. They really embrace him.
Yeah, it's he's a transformational figure on campus. Who doesn't love Super Frog? And they do a nice job of incorporating that into other programming they're doing too outside of game day, as really kind of part of the iconic brand of TCU.
Finally, let's talk about the Froghorn. That in my opinion, produces maybe the most beautiful sound in all of college football. I try not to get too close to that thing, though, because make no mistake, it's loud. Yeah, it's. Do you know the story of the Froghorn? Did you know about the story?
Well, it ties back to the Burlington Northern Railroad, and so again, what's the that was from the area. So what you love about whether you love the horn or you hate the horn, the fact that it has a local tie and it makes sense. You go, okay, that's a piece of the puzzle, is really cool. The other thing that I never thought about is that when you're watching a game on TV and somebody walks in the room and the Froghorn goes off, people know you're watching a TCU game without even looking at the television. I know this because my wife will occasionally be like, "Oh, I didn't know what you were doing. You're watching the Frogs," because that's such an iconic sound that you can hear during a game.
Yes. So if you don't know the story, so this goes back to the 1950s when a group of frat bros decided to sneak in a train horn into the stadium. And then when the team scored, they blew the horn, but they didn't know how to turn it off. The horn kept blowing for 15 minutes straight until the air in it ran out, which naturally got them booted out of the stadium. But they told in the 90s, they told TCU's head coach at the time, was it Pat Sullivan or?
Pat Sullivan would have been early 90s.
Yeah. They told him at the time, and they decided to make it a real thing, and let's make it a horn that's controllable.
Can you imagine that? Think about that. What does a college student usually get kicked out of a game for? We came in with alcohol, or we did something wrong? No, we came in with a really loud horn that we couldn't turn off. That's a unique one. That's a unicorn.
Yes, it absolutely is. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this episode. Scott, you have any final thoughts?
Just going to say it's going to be a great season. I'm pretty excited about Hoover in his third year starting. And in the offseason, there was some drama because some other folks offered some real money and he chose to stay. So I got to believe that he believes in the offense and the players around him. And it's going to be fun to see how it all plays out.
Yep, I can't wait to watch Josh Hoover throw to Eric McAllister in the end zone for many touchdowns this season. Yep, TCU plays Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels on Monday night at, I think, 8 p.m.?
8 p.m., yeah.
8 p.m. So let's go Frogs.
Go Frogs.
Yes. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Signing off from the studio. We'll see you in the next episode.